Hello all, Shadwell here, ready to talk about the next film in my collection, 13 from 1990. It's the 39th film in the Decrepit Crypt of Nightmares, but there's no info on who directed it, nor who the individuals starring in it were. I'm not kidding, there is no info on this movie even existing as far as I can tell. The disc sleeve says the title is 13, says it stars John Doe, and then it says it is from 1990. It doesn't list the director or any real actor names, and the movie is just as bad as it never has an opening title sequence or an end credit sequence with any of the same information. Oh, and since there are no photos of this movie anywhere I could find on the internet, here's photos from the Friday the 13th franchise, since the film is called 13. That's the connection I could come up with. Anyway, let's put aside that the greatest trick 13 ever pulled was proving to the world that it didn't exist, and talk a little bit about it. One, I can't tell if it's shot on film or video. Through context clues, I do believe the film is actually from 1990, as the disc sleeve says, and if it was shot on video in 1990, it would look a lot grungier than it does, which leads me to believe it was shot on film, but I'm not 100% on that. 13 is a Canadian slasher movie about a killer called M targeting AIDS victims, which is kind of a spoiler, but you are never going to find this movie, so what does it matter? The movie wants to be a public service announcement and a plea for compassion at the same time, but it doesn't come off that way. It actually plays a little tone deaf, but I could at least see where it was trying to go. And I will say this much, I would sooner have watched this movie for a first time rather than watching something like Friday the 13th Part 5 A New Beginning, but it's very important to point out I would not want to repeat watch this movie. But for a first time, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, not even close. The kills are even good looking, and everything else about this movie is basically average. The acting is average, the writing is average, the splatter effects are actually a bit more than average. There was an early scene where the camera takes up the perspective of a character pacing back and forth, and so the camera is swaying back and forth, and it is really bad looking. In fact, in the camera department, this film had the camera moving a little too much, like the director didn't know how much he'd need in the editing room, and so he shot way more than he needed, and the editor was busy on crystal meth or something. Something has to explain it. Anyway, I'm gonna give 13 a C grade, an average score for an average movie. Tomorrow it's back to a more recent film with The Best of Enemies. See y'all then.